Preparing.
Got it. Agreeing.
Got it. Hi, Tanja.
Hi, man.
So this is Universal Healing, and this is a very interesting live that we do today with Tanja Meyburgh. That she's one of the world experts, I dare to say, about family constellation. Family constellation is a well, you can describe it better than me. I have a training in it too, but I'm not an expert. And it's a way of healing, I'm going to say. One of the different modalities that help us healing, that helps us to bring health to the wounds that we carry from the past. And in this case, our families and our ancestors. So I would like you, Tanja, if you would like to introduce yourself, that would be great.
Thank you so much, Manel, and thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to share what I love the way you say I'm a world expert. I would say that I have a lot of experience. I'm celebrating my 20-year anniversary of doing this work this year. And yeah, I mean, basically just been doing training for all this time, working in South Africa. A big passion of mine has been looking at how this work can heal the wounds of not only personal histories, collective, but also the collective and the community, and what, you know, what has happened on the national level in South Africa. And I think that's the piece that I bring is quite embodied, quite connected to the land, very much working with ancestral fields. I think quite deeply influenced by South Africa and our history here, and working with the people and all their histories here, as well as then, of course, internationally, taking that knowledge and bringing it to other groups around the world. So yeah, my main work is training this. So I'm happy to share whatever knowledge I have, and it really is based in many years of experience.
Yeah, and what I'm fascinated about family constellations, what is fascinating me, it's been always how well we talk many times, and we as energy healers in Universal Healing, we work with individuals in their energy field. And in the family constellations, we can see and perceive how this energy field, it's everywhere. It's connecting everything. It's connecting all the people and all the lands, and whatever exists have an energy field and is connected. And how family constellation works with this. What can you tell me about that?
So in constellation work, this field that you're referring to, we call it the knowing field. Because what we can do is we can actually access that field of all knowing to find out any information, or to make visible any information that exists in somebody's system or in any system. I mean, it's quite broad. So let me bring it down to the family, which is where it started.
Yes.
And just to say that what we can do is we can step into different positions of our family system, or different people can step into these positions, and in a way start to resonate on a cellular level to this knowing field. It's an informational field. And in that way, they can make visible and bring information to the seeker or to the client that's asking a question. So, for example, somebody will bring problem or a difficulty that they have, and we could look into their family system over many generations. It doesn't even need to be only parents, it could be grandparents, great-grandparents, and start to see how is that difficulty that they're experiencing either a pattern that's repeating or a recreation from the past, or the past that's living in a way in the present, or some kind of ancestral trauma or experience that was never fully resolved. And so it's still living in the family field. And then through that, seeing where it is, acknowledging it, working with it, using our constellation method, we can release that stuck energy so that it can return to where it belongs, and the person can actually be more present, more able to show up in their life, more able to be engaged in relationships from who they truly are, and not out of repeating some kind of patterning or some kind of piece from the past that hasn't been resolved yet.
Why do you think that the repeating pattern happens through generations?
So the way that we see it is that there's a kind of a balance and in systems or in the world that wants to play out. And when something has been, for example, excluded, if a person has been excluded, or an event or a feeling, later generations will try in some way, and it's completely unconscious, and it's a movement out of loyalty and love, will try and resolve that or bring that into inclusion. So the sort of natural movement of systems is to come into balance and to include all that has been excluded, even if that means that, for example, somebody in a future generation will show the symptoms of a person that has been excluded, so that in a way they're saying, don't forget about that one. There's still something that needs to be completed. There's still something that hasn't been released or has not energetically been able to see itself through to a completion. And so that's in a way what we're doing. We're helping the system to become whole again, or to tend to that feeling of balance. I mean, we see it in a way also in the movement of atonement, where people try to make up for the sins or the perpetrations of their ancestors without even realizing what they're doing. So they may be working and working and working and doing some kind of thing that's incredibly bad for themselves and their own well-being, out of some kind of unconscious loyalty to something that needed to be done in earlier generations.
Yeah, now what I was coming to me, that in traditional structures, in traditional cultures, they do remember their ancestors a lot, isn't it? Like here in Mexico, they have the Dia de los Muertos, which is a lot about honoring the dance and remembering and talking about them, talking about the stories that happens. Oh yeah, and this one left, and all that, and they remember. And in more modern societies, I think that there is more tendency to forget about okay, let's move on, and then it's when probably what you were just saying, that the new generations, that they are bringing these wounds or things that have been forgotten, but they need the acknowledgement. They need to be brought into balance, like you were mentioning. And I see how important family constellation can be in these more modern societies, and I think it's why it's thriving so much, because we have forgotten the traditional way.
Absolutely. And I think what you're touching on is so important, is that somewhere, the Western cultures have killed ancestors. They've just put them away and forgotten about them, and also elders. you know, for me, this is a really beautiful thing in living in South Africa, is to have access to those traditional cultures, to those indigenous cultures that still practice ways of honoring ancestors as medicine, as culture, but also as medicine. And you can, when you speak to, for example, an African elder here in South Africa, and that they can see the sickness in Western people, and it, you know, they describe it, and they speak of it in a way of those who've been disconnected from their life source, those who have been cut off from you know, that universal life energy that you know, that we know is so important for our healing. It actually drives everything. And that when we can connect back into our ancestry, not only into the traumas, obviously, I mean, I think a lot of people have sort of read constellation work to work mostly with traumas. But when we actually also connect into the gifts and the resources and all the things that are actually available to us, we suddenly become so powerful and so present and so able to show up into our lives. We've seen people go from being in absolute poverty to really earning really well, and that sort of that manifestation of the life force through the money that then starts to flow is just, you know, unbelievable. Within the space of a year, you see somebody completely you know, come fully back into their power, and it's no wonder that these things have been killed off by institutions that are not so invested in us having that amount of power and capacity to direct our own healing and to be in relationship in this way spiritually with our ancestors. And I think it's not sort of classical constellation work to sort of really work with the relationship with ancestors. That is something more that we've integrated more in the South African context, because we see how important it is. It's one thing doing a constellation, but there's also the possibility to work with ancestors on a daily basis and in your everyday life, and how much that brings in terms of your own sense of self, your identity, your sense of belonging, your grounding, your rootedness, and really connecting you also to, you know, where you come from in the deepest sense.
Tanja, this is so beautiful, and I can see and I can feel it just in the moment, how the, you know, the natural tradition just comes and supports us, and it's always here for us when we are who we are, when we're stepping more into who we really are. But I have a question for you, maybe for the people that they don't know much about family constellation. If you have a client that comes to you and says, I would like to do a family constellation, could you describe more or less how that would look?
Sure. I mean, I think the practicals of it is actually really nice to set that up exactly how it works. It is done individually, but the real power of this work and how it originated was doing it in a group. So you don't need your actual family to do a family constellation, which was a very big departure from family therapy, where you had to drag the whole family along, and if somebody didn't want to come, and it was just so complicated. Now you can just go by yourself to do a family constellation, and that other people in the room will represent the different family members. And so the person who comes with a question will ask what it is that they're seeking for. And as the facilitator, it'll then be my job to ask a few questions, maybe to get a sense of who is it that we need to set up. Maybe we don't even know, but what we know, because we have this informational field, is that if we then we take a person for that client, we take a person for their mother and for their father. We can even start there. And with the intention that we're setting in the field of that question, it starts to show itself by how those people are standing, how they are standing in relation to each other. The people that are standing in those positions, as their body starts to resonate into that field, they may even have emotions, they may have images coming, they may get quite a bit of information, which seems
What,
quite.
what do you mean they when they start to resonate? Tell me about that.
So it's not something that you have to know how to do. And what a lot of people are quite surprised that anyone can do it. You just step into that position, and yes, we have a certain, all of us have a mother and all of us have a father, but we're not playing out our own mother or playing out our own father. We're actually sensing very deeply into what that person's father and what that person's mother is like. And it's not a conscious process. It's very much a body process. We don't have to know how to do it. We don't need to know anything about those people. In fact, we try to take as little information as possible, so that when somebody stands in that position, there's a lot of information in the position. So as a constellator, I am trained in observation. When I train my constellation students, I train them in observation first and foremost. What do you see? And there's a lot that you can see when somebody is got a representative for themselves, somebody for their mother, their father, and how is everybody facing? Who's looking at who? Who's looking up? Who's looking down? What does the body look like? And we can actually see quite a lot about these people. We can maybe see, oh, wow, the father is not even looking at the child. The father is looking into the distance. And the question comes, well, who are they looking at? And I may ask, who did the father miss? Or who was the father looking for? Oh, he lost his own father when he was 6 years old. So we'll bring in the father, and there'll be a movement. And so we start to build up a picture of why and how this person has ended up in their particular place in the family. And we may suggest some movements and some healing sentences to help to bring some kind of order back, because often what has happened is things have been forgotten or excluded, or have kind of come out of order.
Order, such a word. Huh?
Yeah, no, it's a kind of a loaded word, but it's interesting because in South Africa, that's not an unknown concept, the concept of order and hierarchy, and as Westerners, we often want to resist the idea of hierarchy, and that there is an order. There are elders and parents and children, and part of coming into a more healthy relationship with our ancestors is really taking our place in the right place, so that we're not doing something for our grandfather or for our grandmother or for our mother or father. We're actually just doing our thing, and we're leaving what's theirs with them.
No, but it's great. To me, was one of the more shocking things when I did my training about constellations, the order, that actually there is a natural order that maybe, in times of feminism and all that can be a little shocking for us, but also that it's we can play with it as well and see what feels right, what feels good, because it's all about feeling right, isn't it? In the family, when everything comes back to that order, then there is the balance that allows everyone to be who they are. Isn't it? But when we are out of order, it's confusing. And I think this is what is happening also in the world a lot in these times of change and I'm going to say manipulation of the what we see and what we don't see. But this order, like for me as an energy healer trained to work in different levels of the field, that there are levels of the field that they keep the structure. Okay,
Yes.
so they keep the structure for this body, and also to keep the structure for the other levels that are holding more emotions, and to be there, to be contained, to be in an also an order. So a healthy person, a healthy body, it's included in that. We call it divine order because it have high vibration also, that from higher vibration comes down to lower vibration, and I think, and then to the physical, that also, the physical have this order to, in order to function. We need this balance, and we need the blood to do the work of the blood, the heart to do the work of the heart, not try to be the lungs and all that stuff, isn't it? So
Yeah.
so it's but in family constellation is such a space that you can see the importance of that.
Absolutely. And it's not only the orders of time, where you have your elders came first, and then your parents, then the children, and sort of putting that into place, because we have children who take the roles of parents, and we have children who take the roles of grandparents. And it's very relieving and freeing, actually, to step out of those roles, as you say, to be the heart, to be the heart, or the child to be the child. But I'd love to pick up on what you were saying there about the, feminism, and because I think this is a bad rap that constellation work gets. And I think a lot of people are, concerned about the fact that we really do look at a masculine and a feminine lineage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's and in the way that I work with this, I don't see it as a way, that there's that the one comes first or the one comes second, or that there's or that we're trying to in any way exclude people who identify as one or the other, or differently to what their birth gender was, but that we do have a place, regardless of how we identify in our lineage.
Uh-huh.
We were born into a position, we were born into a place where we have a father and a mother, biological father and a biological mother, and biological ancestors. And I think in constellation work, we work a lot with the family ancestors, the biological ancestors, and of course the adoptive or the other significant people, and what role they also play.
Uh-huh.
But I think what we also need to remember is that ancestors in the indigenous and the traditional sense is much wider than that.
Mm-hmm.
It includes nature and animals and the earth and land, and also what we see in constellation work and in traditional work as well is that the perpetrators,
Mm-hmm.
not only the people that are part of our family, but also other people have become bonded to our family system and can impact us. So we may not understand some aspect of ourselves that may be violent or very controversial and difficult. And when we start to look into the system and we look at what happened, at the facts of where was my family, what wars were they involved in, or perhaps there was a murder or something, we actually find that those people have somehow become connected and bonded to our family system too. So yeah, I mean, our ancestors are a lot more than we think they are.
No, that's so fascinating, because it takes me to that place that I know very well, but that we are really all connected. We are all a big family. Yeah, and in that connection that we have, me from here in America, now I'm connected with you because I'm talking with you, that you are in South Africa. But in a way, all my lineage is connecting with all your lineage in this moment. And then I also do past life regressions, and doing that, you also can see how we are connected with all other different cultures from other moments in time, and the lineages of all these people, you know, coming back and going forward, are connected to you too, because you know you were there at some point. And so, and we are all playing this game, and I think the final part of the game, if there is any final, but or I'm going to say the tendency is always to bring balance, to bring you were saying information or knowledge about our family. So the information and knowledge of that we are all a big family, and we can hopefully live as a family in this planet all together.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you just imagine the kind of practicals of the ancestral lineages, it takes you very quickly to that place where you realize how connected we are. Because if you imagine your parents and your grandparents and your great grandparents, and everybody going right back to the very beginning, at somewhere at the very beginning, we're coming back to very few people, and we're coming back to a creator, a place where life force comes from. And so we're all connected to that same source somewhere, because the life force passed forward. And yeah, I mean, if you're imagining those first people walking around the earth, there are not that many of them. So we are connected, even just in a blood relation sense, if you go far back enough.
What about God? How does God place? Do you have experience with God?
So yeah, so interestingly enough, I once went to a conference where my great teachers were doing constellations, and I did a constellation for myself. And my facilitator put God in my constellation. I thought, what are you doing? I don't why? So, you know, it is possible to do that. And I've also got one of my students who's she's a pastoral counselor, and she brings God into all her constellations. So it's certainly something, you know, one can bring in all sorts of abstract elements. It's a relationship. So anyone who has a relationship with God, yes, you bring God in, and then we're working with the relationship, or we're looking at how does this impact all our relationships. We can also bring in land, we can bring in countries, we can look at, you know, all these different abstract elements. It doesn't necessarily have to be people. The way I see it is that if we look at that V going back, we come back to a source, some kind of creative moment where things started. And we can name that by many different names. And I work, you know, all over the world. I work in the United Arab Emirates. I work with people who have a totally different concept of God. But when I do that meditation, everybody can relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it is that moment where we're like, oh, we're actually so connected, because that creative creation, we might name it differently, but
yeah,
if we look at it in that way, it's the same.
yeah,
it's exactly.
Yeah, and of course, God, like we're mentioning feminism, or it can be a concept, and it can be a very personal concept as well. But there is something that I like to call the divine, that it's that higher intelligence, or higher, well, not just intelligence, also in a loving, in an unconditional way that many times shows up in constellations when that is required, sometimes with very big process about wars and stuff. I've seen that, and how that really brings a higher understanding and a higher connection with everyone. And what look, there is one thing that I never resonates with me when people says, "Oh, human, we are like this." You know what I mean? Meaning that we are murderers, that we are like to take advantage of others, and all this type of thing. And I remember that since I was a kid, and like, oh no, we are like this. I don't know if we are like this. I don't think that we are like this. Maybe we are like this in a moment, or wherever it happens. We can become like this if we are treated like this all the time. But what do you think about that? Because you working so much with the nature, human nature in these constellations, probably you have a perception of that.
Yeah, I mean, I steer away from generalizations as much as I can. And certainly when one looks at things from a systemic perspective, you don't see an individual quite the same as you did before, where they're just, the sum of their experiences. They started life as a tabula rasa. They were just, that's it. We can explain everything in terms of what happened to this person. This is kind of blown out of the water completely. And we start to see that actually sometimes people are playing out much bigger fates than is just their own destiny. They're carrying things that are of their people. It could be, something for the Jewish nation. It could be something much bigger that people are playing out. And I do think that, Bert Hellinger, the founder of this constellation work, got a lot of flack because he had quite a bit to say about perpetrators and about Hitler as well. And that how, it was sort of saying it was much bigger than him. On the one hand, there was a kind of a national fate, or a bigger movement that was bigger forces that were at play. And at the same time, one has to take individual and personal responsibility for what you've done. I mean, we see that in South Africa, where people are saying, it wasn't me that did that, that was involved in apartheid. It wasn't me that did that, but we benefited, and so we have some kind of responsibility and some kind of reparation to make, because of our ancestors. And a lot of people don't. It's not a very popular opinion or a very popular thing to hear. But I think, just going back to the spiritual piece, I do think that constellation work somewhere, when you experience it, it's very hard to not kind of realize that there's a bigger force, or a greater force of love that wants to actually be, that wants to help us, or that wants to shift what's difficult. Because whatever we're working with, there is a kind of a movement in the right direction, in the healing direction. And when we open up into a connected position with other humans and with other people in the constellation, everyone can feel that feeling of divine love, of unconditional love. You can really sit in a circle, and you can have love for an abuser. You can have love for a perpetrator, because all of a sudden the picture just feels so much bigger and so much richer to understand, and to come out of the judgment of what they did and why they did it.
That to me, that sounds like such a beautiful healing process. And like you were mentioning in South Africa and all that to bringing justice is not about punishment, but it's about acknowledgement and reparation, if that is possible. But and in many societies, like here in America, I think that the justice it's made in a way that is about punishment, or you did this bad and you deserve to pay for it. instead, and family constellation actually is a way of working in bringing justice and balance, and understanding that just doing that, it's repairing something, isn't it? That that from that point we can not start from zero, but we can start walking in another direction and being more who we really are. That it's at the end what we are here for, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And acknowledging things as they are. You know, we have a tendency to want to deny things and to push them away and to pretend that they're not there, and that kind of culture of let's just put it under the carpet. You know, we really see the impact of that over generations. What happens when we actually look at it? We acknowledge it, we honor what needs to be honored, we grieve what needs to be grieved.
Yeah.
And in that, it you know, it can, the energy can flow again.
Yeah.
And what we're doing, we're not only doing it for ourselves. You know, we can see when we're doing constellation, we can see the ancestors are actually celebrating. They're happy. They want to see us thrive. They, you know, nobody's sitting there thinking, oh, you know, we don't want you to have a good life. You know, just so. It's really beautiful when that healing work happens. You can see that it not only impacts those that came before, in the sense that they come into their dignity and they can look at us and they can be proud, but also what we're doing, every movement that we're doing in uncovering and opening and looking and acknowledging and honoring is healing our children and our grandchildren, and taking responsibility for those things in the moment, letting that energy shift so that it doesn't perpetuate into the future. I mean, we're doing our work for the future and for future generations as well.
Yeah, we all as a big family, isn't it? And how important, and you mentioned the word responsibility, which is it's a heavy word as well for many people. But there is in my experience, I think there is a misconception about responsibility, that it's many times it's in education and all that, many times we've been told to be responsible with things that we have to do that maybe is not who we are, but they are imposed on us. And the responsibility, like here in Family Constellation, in life in general, it's to explore, to allow yourself to become who you really are. And then all this balance will come with it. And all this healing for the next generations will, in my spiritual process, I just remember when I had my kids, that was such an impactful thing in my life, because I was not being honest with myself 100%. You know, I was kind of going along with life, doing, you know, things and supposed to do and all that. But then I really sat down and I started really taking responsibility, which is a scary thing at some point, because it may mean change and that you've been wrong, or that you've been, you know, not really facing life.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of people take responsibility for many things that are not theirs to take responsibility for, and then they don't take responsibility for the things that are really important.
Yeah.
And when one brings that into alignment, there's so much freedom that's available. And especially because what we look at in constellation work is that really your responsibility as an adult is to really live your life fully, is to really take that life that you received, take the best of it, take the best from your grandparents, from your ancestors, from everybody, and take it forward and pass it forward in a way that is your responsibility, is to make that turn towards life and towards taking life forward. as opposed to carrying all the burdens of everything else. And yes, it does mean that when you're looking at your children, you're taking life forward and you're kind of taking responsibility in a different way, but it's got a different quality, that kind of responsibility, and it has a freedom in it. It's like, oh, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to take life forward. I'm choosing this. So I think it can be quite empowering to make that turn.
I love it, and to me it's like the challenge of taking your life in your hands and say, okay, now I see that I really have a responsibility about my own life. It's not about what I've been told of my life, what the government says, what I've been whatever, what the church says. It's my life, and I want to explore and become who I really am. And I think that Family Constellation, it's a great way to do that exploration. And I'm feeling now that we're getting into the end of our beautiful conversation. So I would like you, Tanja, to we're going to put your webpage under the video that will be posted in Facebook, I think in Instagram too, so people can find you and can learn more about you and maybe book a session with you, or try to find, I don't know, do you do individual sessions like?
So I don't do any sessions anymore. I'm only training and supporting the facilitators that I've trained, but I have many that I've trained and they're really good and I can recommend them. So
Yeah. And
you can absolutely get in touch. And if you want to learn the work, that's what we do. And I'm always happy to point people in the right direction. I have a big network around the world, so I'm happy to recommend.
That's wonderful, because we in Universal Healing, we have also many healers that are curious about family constellations, this modality that helps in a different way, but that really, in my case and other people that I know that they have studied family constellations as well, it helps you a lot when working with groups and when doing group process and teaching as well, teaching groups, and because it's a way of perceiving and embodying the energy that is there. So you become very sensitive to what wants to be presented, what wants to be knowledge, what is there, what is here in this room now. It's great for that as well. So maybe some of our people would like to contact you and get your, I'm going to say fabulous training. I don't, it's a word that lately I'm liking, because and I can see how good you are in your work and in your training, how your level of understanding and embodiment of it's excellent. So thank you very much for being with us. I'm gonna in this Universal Healing, what we do is we do long distance group healings, and what we're gonna offer now to the people that is seeing this video is the next 2 healings. We focus our energy into something, so the healing, it's easier for us as healers, instead of just doing opening the space. Okay, what wants to be healed? We offer every Wednesday and every Sunday. We say we're going to focus into that, so people can say, okay, this it's good for me. So this Wednesday we're focusing on the liver, and Sunday we're going to be focusing our healing work into the chakras of the body. So it's not always physical, it can be different things, but very concrete, so you can know what you want. And so what we're offering is that if you message us in our webpage or in our Facebook or Instagram, you can message us and say Tanja Family Constellation or FC, we're going to offer you, include you in our healings, these two coming healings. If you, Tanja, want to participate, let us know, and we'll include you too. And it's a great way to just keep walking this path of becoming more who you are. And energy healing, look, at the end, Tanja, everything is energy, isn't it? So let's keep moving.
Thank you so much for the conversation. I've really enjoyed talking to you. I can, it's really lovely to speak to somebody who's so passionate about the work as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We may talk in the future again. So it's been a pleasure talking with you. Bye-bye.
And goodbye, everybody that's been listening. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Bye-bye.